Two. So let's get started. All right. Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Always delighted to have Shelly here. Uh, Today is, we are focusing on fear versus destiny. And what is the topic today, Shelly?
We're going to be talking about forced action, which is something I just created out of my head, but I think it accurately describes something that's imperative to take if you're going to overcome fear and anxiety in your life.
Wonderful. Now, do you want to recap what we did last time and ask if anybody did the homework they were assigned?
Yes, I would love that. I'm feeling my old teacher vibes, come into play here. So last week we spent time talking about how important it is to understand yourself and what the benefit of that is, right? So when we understand ourselves, we learn what our strengths and our weaknesses are. And why that is important is because it adds balance to our life, because then we know our strengths that we can capitalize on, but we also know our weaknesses, and we can do something about them when we know them, when we're seeking to look at ourselves in the mirror clearly. And really, our weaknesses are what have the potential to waylay our plans, our hopes, our dreams, our best intentions. So that's why it's so important to know both of those.
Wonderful. So folks, if you did the exercises from last time, if you did the homework from last time, and if you wanted to share what you learned from it, you're welcome to do that at this time. Go ahead and type an exclamation mark in chat if you'd like to share what it was like.
And just as a reminder, what the homework was is it was, hey, take a quiz to see what your strengths and weaknesses are, to better understand yourself, or perhaps find a trusted mentor or advisor to provide good feedback, truthful feedback to you. So if you discovered anything about yourself or have any insights, we'd love to hear them.
Okay, we'll give about 15 seconds if somebody wants to share. Judith, go ahead.
Hi. All right. Yeah. So I did, Shelly, the day after I woke up, and you had mentioned journaling, actually, something that's come up in several meetups. And I just never thought, well, how am I going to add that to my things? As it is, my problem is I'm not getting things done. But for some reason, Saturday morning, I woke up after our meeting and I started journaling. And I thought, well, I don't really know what I'm going to do. I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to sort of see how it is I'm spending my time, what I'm doing. And then after 2 weeks, maybe I'll have something to look at and see where I can make improvements and, look at it. So it was actually really, really helpful. That was the biggest help, actually, the journaling. I took the test or whatever, the assessment, personality test. Honestly, I did not look correct to me at all. I've had, I've done the Briggs-Myers or Myers-Briggs or whatever it's called, and I felt that was a lot more accurate. This one looked totally off the wall for me, but that's just what I feel about it. So honestly, I just dismissed it. A couple things seemed like okay, and the rest were like, no, this doesn't describe me at all.
I got it. Yeah. Well, good job though. Good job. Excellent work. Proud of you.
Wonderful. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into today's topic.
Okay, great. So again, we learned about understanding ourselves to determine our strengths and weaknesses. And I really feel like one of the greatest weaknesses that we can battle is fear and anxiety. And I really believe that fear and anxiety is a primary driver for why we don't do the things in life that we say we want to do. And I remember when I was in the throes of overcoming my own challenges in life that I found myself in, right? On welfare, no income, and I was struggling to make ends meet. And I had a lot of negative emotion. And while I was thinking about today and what I was going to say about forced action, I sat down and I really pondered on, well, Shelley, what were the things that you were feeling? And in what way, if you had decided to not take action, in what way would that have negatively impacted you? And so I sat down, I made a list, and I remember a lot of what I felt was I really didn't want to fail, right? There's a fear of failure is just, that's a real driver that keeps us from taking action. I also didn't think I could succeed. I had a tremendous amount of anxiety over the idea that I was never, ever, ever going to have success. And I remember I would go through bouts of seasons where I would just be consumed with that anxiety of my inability to succeed. I didn't think I was capable. It was in unfamiliar or new territory, right? So that causes us to have tremendous feelings of fear and anxiety and really can prevent us taking steps in action. I didn't feel confident. That was part of it. That feeling of lack of confidence caused me to have a great amount of fear and anxiety. So that could have prevented me from taking action and taking steps. And I also did not want to get hurt. I didn't want to get embarrassed. So these were all things that I felt, and y'all can probably think of your own drivers in terms of fear and anxiety and what they have caused in yourself to prevent you from taking action when you needed to. So now let's talk about what I'm calling forced action. And forced action is exactly what it says it is. It is taking action no matter how you feel. Now think about that, taking action no matter how you feel. So feelings are really important. We have lots of really positive emotion, but those aren't the things that usually hold us back. It's really the negative emotions, and specifically fear and anxiety, that keep us from taking action. Feelings are important. These particular feelings are not, they're really not our best friends, and we want to be aware of them. We have to choose to not follow these feelings because they can drive us in the opposite direction that we really want to go, right? So if we allow that fear and anxiety to keep us from taking steps, we'll never get to where we want to be. Forced action really is the commitment to yourself that you will take a small step no matter what. And so that can really be a trigger word for you, right? Like it can be something that you say when all of a sudden you say you feel fear or anxiety, you see that it's preventing you from taking a step, you can think of the words forced action and what we're going to continue to talk about today. So let's talk about, so that's forced action, right? We're choosing to take a step no matter how we feel. What forced action is not is there's something you want to do. Let's say I'm a runner. I don't run marathons, but let's say if I wanted to run a marathon, it doesn't, but I've never run a day in my life, right? It doesn't mean that I'm going to get up and on any particular day and just say, you know what, today I want to run a marathon, so I'm going to run a marathon. No, you would never succeed at that, right? So what forced action looks like is instead, when you have the idea, you have the dream, you have the goal, there's something that you want to achieve, do not feel like you got to take giant steps and be some giant to accomplish this. You know what you can do? You can lace up your shoes, you can walk out your door, and you can just take a few steps. Maybe all you do is you jog half a block, and then you turn around and come home. And then the next day, you know what you do? You don't go out and you run a marathon. You don't even have that aspiration for yourself. You know what? You say, I'm just going to take a small step. I'm going to lace up my shoes. I'm going to go out the door. I'm going to run a half a block. The next day I run a half a block. The next day I run a half a block. And then you know what happens? In maybe a month or two, you're like, you know what? I'm feeling really good about running a half a block. I've been doing it consistently. You've built up the belief in yourself that you actually can do it because you've been doing a small, tiny step consistently over a period of time. So then one day you wake up and guess what you say? You say, I've been doing a really good job running that half a block. Today, I'm going to run half a block out and I'm going to run a half a block back. And so you muster up the strength, you muster up the courage, and you do it. You run a half a block out, you run a half a block back, and you know what? You don't die. You actually do it. And then the next day, you keep doing the same thing over and over. And this is what forced action looks like. It's a tiny step all along when you're very scared, you're very fearful, but you go do the tiniest little thing. So what that does is every time you're in a consumed state of fear and you take action, you lay a new pathway in your brain, or you remap your brain. That's another way to say that, right? So that step that is so hard, lacing up your shoes and just walking out the door is so hard. So now you've laid this synaptic pathway in your brain. So now it's there. It's the first time. It's really hard. It's petrifying. It's terrifying, whatever it is, right? The next day you do it, that pathway was laid down one day. Now you're going to go that same pathway and you're going to do it again. And then you're going to do it again. And you're going to make that path and that map in your brain get stronger and better. And then the next thing you know, you're getting stronger, you're getting better, and you're getting braver. Right. So for me, it was the whole financial thing. It was, I did not want to be a burden to society or to my children. And I did not know how I was going to do it. And I was scared to death. But every day I just said, okay, this is the thing I've got to do. I've got to get to this place. What step can I take? And I would take it. And then one day I remember going, wow, I'm not as scared as I used to be. Didn't happen overnight, took a couple of years, but it was my consistent choice and drive to act that allowed me to get to a place where I was less fearful and less fearful over time. And that's actually what you can do. If you think right now, hey, what is my fear? What is holding me back? You can choose to have that same outcome by taking small steps every single day, remapping your own brain and choosing to take action, take forced action to build up your confidence and your own bravery within you. Now, one thing I want to add is when you're doing this, let's say you decide after today that you're going to take forced action. You're going to label something and you're going to say, I'm going for it and I'm doing it. There are times when you will not succeed every single time. Like for those of you that know my story, you know that I spent about 1.5 years attempting to get into PA school. I didn't achieve that goal. And I definitely was devastated by it. I remember when I found out I wasn't getting in, I cried for about 2 days. But you know what? I learned that I could do really hard things. And I also learned that when I didn't achieve the hard things I was trying to do, it didn't defeat me and I wasn't going to die and I was a survivor. And really, don't you want to learn the same thing about yourself in the area of your own fears? Imagine what that would do for you for the rest of your life to realize how brave and powerful and strong you are by taking tiny, small steps, taking action, and then when things go awry, realizing it doesn't defeat you. And again, if you've been to any of the other meetups that I've spoken at, you'll know I have failed way many more times than I have ever succeeded. And I'm stronger for it. In fact, I advise you to fail. Failure is the stepping stone to success, and it builds within you a confidence that you will not be defeated. So that's about it, Shrikant. That was kind of quick. We do have some of those questions, though, that you and I had talked about.
Yes. So what we'll do, so folks, what we're trying to do here is to take, the format here is to put an idea on the table, raise questions about it, and then get into breakout rooms and discuss the idea amongst ourselves in a group of about 6 to 8 people. go through the questions, discuss the idea, and then come back, talk about our takeaways, ask questions at that point, and Shelley will respond to questions and respond to your takeaway as well. Okay, so that's the format. So what are the questions, Shelley?
Okay, so Shrikant, do you want me to drop them into chat, or do you have
Yes,
that?
please. You can go ahead and do that. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me do this. Okay, so identify at least one specific scenario where you avoid action out of fear and anxiety. So this is really important, right? We're looking deep within ourselves, we're being really transparent with ourselves, and we're saying, hey, where is a scenario that fear and anxiety is preventing me from achieving my goals? The second is, when this happens, are you able to identify your emotion prior to responding to it? So prior to, running away because you don't want to take action because you're so consumed with fear and anxiety. If yes, share how you know fear and anxiety is about to impact your next steps. Again, this is about identification, right? And then third, brainstorm ways to identify the emotion you're feeling and ways to motivate yourself to action in spite of your fear. And I want you to write these down. It's going to be part of our homework. And let me go.
I have gone ahead and put
them. Oh, you did
it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Chat, no problem. And I'm also putting the breakout room guidelines. So what you do is that initially give a chance for everybody to answer the questions, give like 2 minutes each, so that you can hear many voices, and then you have a discussion. And the rules are: you keep on topic, be brief, be courteous, encourage others to speak. And if needed, you can just click on ask for help and I'll help you. All right, so I'm going to start the breakout rooms. The breakout rooms will run for, I'm going to make it 25 minutes. So you have enough time to go through the questions. Let's do one more time. Shelley, can you repeat the questions one more time?
Yes, of course. So again, we're going to identify at least one specific scenario where you avoid action out of fear and anxiety. So back to understanding ourselves, right? It's really important to know ourselves and know our weaknesses. And this is helping us to think about it and identify that. When this happens, are you able to identify your emotion prior to responding to it? If yes, share how you know fear and anxiety is about to impact your next steps. What do you do? What kinds of things do you do to prevent or to avoid taking action? And then brainstorm ways to identify the emotion you're feeling and ways to motivate yourself to action in spite of your fear, and write these down.
Wonderful. All right, so I'm starting the breakout rooms now. In 25 minutes, we'll automatically come back here in this room to share our takeaways and ask questions. Starting the breakout rooms now. Well, welcome back, folks. Welcome back. All right, so folks, now it is time for takeaways and questions. Everybody is encouraged to share their takeaways and questions. So the way we do this is we got those 4 rules. Rule number 1, type exclamation mark if you would like to share your takeaways or have any questions. You can have takeaways only, you can have questions only, or you can have both takeaways and questions. So that's first rule, type exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom. Rule number 2, keep on topic. We're talking about forced action against fear. Rule number 3, be brief. Rule number 4, feel free to disagree with anybody on anything. Speak your mind, but do so courteously. Jim, nice to see you. You're first.
Yeah, hi Shrikant. Hi Shelley, nice to see you.
Hey, Jim.
When we first went into the breakout room, I didn't think I had any fears that were holding me back from something I wanted to do. But then as we started talking, I realized there were a couple things. So the conversation helped draw out a couple of things that were worth me talking about. And what it came down to is me having I guess both the knowledge that my action is the best for me, and complete confidence that even if that action leads to any negative consequences, it's still better to take the action than not.
That's a very true statement, Jim. Very true statement. Because really we're learning all the time. I feel like in all the ways that I also have, just like you're saying, I've taken action and it hasn't gone the way that I expected, that I've learned something really valuable in the process. And maybe even the valuable thing is that I can survive making a bad decision, you know, and it's not going to defeat me. I'm so glad you shared that. Thank you.
Next up is Mushki. Mushki, go ahead.
Hi. So I wanted to share an acronym I learned from ACT, Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. So FEAR stands for fusion, and then I'll explain it. Fusion, expectations, avoidance, and remoteness from values. So fusion is when we view our thoughts as facts and we don't see them as just, you know, mental constructs by our mind, which our mind isn't us. So we take them as facts, we fuse with them. E is our expectations. We have expectations of reality. We try to have that control. And A is avoidance, where we just avoid what we're scared from, what we are scared of. And then R, we're remote from our values. So we're scared because we don't even know what we value and what our goals are and what our focus should be. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Mishki. That actually resonates with me, especially it ties in with what Mark shared 2 weeks ago about our values being important to understanding who we are. And so you're just also reiterating what Mark said that day. It really impacted me, him saying that. And it's so true. We do need to know our values because it tells us who we are, and then it can direct the actions that we need to take.
Thank you. Next up is Dan, Jean, Mike, and Stephen. Dan.
Yeah, so my realization out of this is I've had lots of health issues. And in order to cope, I've been doing lots of forced action, you know, get up off my ass, go do the washing, do this, do that. But I've been doing this for about 6 months. And what I found is I've been overwhelmed in my forced action.
Oh, wow.
In other words, I've been like, my God, you know, am I always going to live my life out of forced action? Do I have to use extreme will in order to do something? And as I reflected in my group that we're talking about, but I've been reflecting about this theme for quite some time, is what I've realized in the last 6 months is as my health has degraded and I've lived out of forced action, so to speak, I've done very little things that bring me joy or things that are purely for fun. So what I've started doing is doing stuff just purely for the fun of it, with absolutely no agenda in mind, and things that I absolutely love to do. And what I found is if I can almost remember to do that during the day, I feel a lot lighter, I feel a lot better, and far less anxious about stuff. Because I just thought, really, is this what life's about? It's just, I'm going to have to just use extreme will to force everything into action. Just, like, surely there must be a time where life can happen and things can happen without me having to use extreme will to force it to happen. So yeah, the realization was just simply just make allowances for things that are fun and not have an agenda to that, just the joy of doing that. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
I love that. And that's almost like allowing yourself to have a reward, because your forced action is a little different than, say, someone who is consumed with fear and not taking any action. And I can really identify with what you're talking about, because when I was in the throes of poverty, every day was like that for me. And I was at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So my brain didn't even have the capacity for joy or creativity. I was no longer a creative person because it was all about survival, right? And every day it was me, pounding out what I had to do against what felt natural for me to do, right? And I was charting unknown territory. And so I think you're talking about making choices for joy. A lot of times what I talk about is rewarding myself, right? I've done these really hard things. So now I'm going to reward myself for having done a good job in all of these hard things, and in whatever way that is that brings me joy or happiness or rest or reprieve or whatever it is. So thank you for sharing that. That's so good.
Thank you.
Next up is Jean. Jean, go ahead.
Yeah, so actually, I said my fear is I don't have enough fear to put myself into danger sometimes. So actually, I just booked a ticket to Hawaii for my 50 years birthday, which is coming in a few days. And I cannot believe I can hardly, yeah, so my husband doesn't want to go, so I'm going with my younger son. So we have this whole plan. And I think my high school classmate just went there. They're the safest place if you want to go anywhere warm, because you have to do the test before. And then after you're landing too, and they have checking you. And there were very few tourists there. But anyway, so we are in a great group of women, lots of women, which is not common in this discussion. And I found they are so capable and they have self-doubt. And I wonder, we were discussing why. And we realized in American culture, you know, this strong, capable woman somehow in this environment, capitalism, you know, like they are grew up in this impression. They have self-criticism and self-doubt. And I grew up in China. I said the best thing Chairman Mao ever did in China, he did a lot of bad things, but the only good thing he did, I think, is equalize women and men. I grew up, I don't have that impression. And there are a lot of women engineers grew up in China who come here too. You know, I think that's the capitalism. And also if you see movie, you always see naked woman in American movie. You don't see naked man, but when you see European movie, you see both. That shows how weird this culture is. And they have all this model, perfect model photoshopped on the magazines, and every woman supposed to look like. It's just, I think this culture brainwashed women, make them self-criticize. And we have to work against it. Capitalism have to put in your fear so they can profit over you. That's the only way they can make it work. You know, we have to overcome that. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, it's interesting that you're bringing that up, because I just had a conversation with someone of the opposite sex, and my comment was just with two different men, and my comment to one was, well, I think women really struggle with this self-esteem thing more. You know, just to your point, we have all of these, airbrushed models on magazines, and we feel like we have to look up. And, he shared so much with me of his own insecurities and his own struggles and how he internalizes certain things. And then I asked someone else, I said, hey, I'm wondering, like, do you struggle? And he shared with me his struggle. So I think struggle, definitely culture plays a difference in it and impacts it. But I think as humans, we have the potential for all of us to struggle with insecurities. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Next up is going to be Mike, Stephen, Wen, and Laura. Mike, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Oh, gee. Oh, gee, I lost my script. True confession, the time. This kind of draws out. And actually, I'm afraid of almost everything. I feel insecure and inadequate to all the tasks that I've got to do at hand. My to-do list is too long. I'm afraid of what's going on with the panic right now, the disintegration of Western society that could end civilization, the collapse of the world economy. I'm afraid of flying. I'm afraid of going to New York. I'm afraid of DC. And also, I know this is not a rehearsal. This is the real thing. This is not a simulation. I have always used, and I was surprised that it came up in this thing, a variant of the UDA model and some later versions, with one of them which is called EDA. I forget what that means. But one of the things you learn is that fear punctuates every single step of that model. And you're encouraged to do worst case design and do it quickly. Then I say to myself, when I'm talking to myself, feel the fear, but you've got to do it anyway. Feel the fear, but you got to do it anyway. And also, if it's not me, then who's going to do it? If not now, when am I going to do it? And also, there's somebody gave some acronyms of what fear stands for. The one that resonated with me is false evidence that appears real. And a certain amount of anxiety is good to keep you at the top of your game. But like we said in the break room, there were some people who said it's probably not good to be at the top of your game all the time. That's a dangerous place to sit. But that's where I am right now, and I'm inadequate and insecure about staying there. So I'll yield the balance of my time once again.
Thanks, Mike. That was great. Appreciate you sharing.
Thank you. Next up is Stephen, Wen, and Laura. Stephen.
Hi, Shelley.
Hello.
Happy birthday, Jang. Listening to everybody speak now, I'm coming up with a lot of more takeaways. But to what Mike said, some fear is actually good. Fear of the pandemic, fear of getting the virus, so you're going to protect yourself. But one of my other takeaways is that it might not be fear that is actually in holding one back, which I got from a lot of what people were saying in my group. A lot has to do with what you tell yourself and what's going on in your head. I think several people have alluded to that. And preparing or thinking about tonight, it's funny how certain quotes and things come up and then go, oh, this is a perfect example. So there's a quote from the Buddha that I saw. Your mind will always believe everything you tell it. Feed it faith, feed it truth, feed it with love. So I think what you tell yourself is really important to conquer fear. And the other takeaway is if you don't try or if you don't do it, whatever it is, if it's something you think you want to do, just do it. Like you said, Shelley, you're not going to succeed if you never try, and you're going to fail plenty of times.
Yeah.
So that's what I have to say.
I love that. And I would agree with you, and I contemplated adding that, in somewhere, the idea that there is healthy fear, right? I mean, there's fear that keeps us safe, like you said. And we're not really talking about that kind of fear. I think for me, I'm speaking about fear from my own perspective and my own experiences, which was consuming all day, every day. And if I had yielded to it, I would have never taken action. I would have stayed on welfare. But I totally agree with you. This is like not the kind of fear where you're alone at night in a scary area and you feel like you need to get out of there, then you need to get out of there, that kind of thing, right? So I agree with you 100%.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking of a job that I had, and often a lot of my jobs is a fear of being fired. So I'm going to put in more time. I'm going to be extra diligent. So you can look at fear in a good way that way as well.
Yeah, I don't know that I don't know. I have some thoughts about that. I'm gonna have to chew on that, but thanks for bringing it up.
Thank you. Next up is Wen, Laura, Ahmed, JJ, and Kevin. Wen.
Okay. My takeaway tonight is that fears come from your response to fears could be like you freeze or you take action, right? And freeze is like manifests in many different ways. It could come out as a procrastination or excuses, distraction, avoidance, all this. And take action actually, and when you freeze, actually, it's a much easier way to deal with fear because you're comfortable in that place, like not moving, and to take action actually create a lot of anxiety and stress. But once you go off that threshold, it's much easier, to make it like a baby step and make it into a habit to come battle, instead of using your will. I don't believe in will, actually. I believe in habits. So habits can help you keep it up much easier. And the solution also to fears is that, for me personally, I want to really feel how my body feels. When one is in fierce situation, your body manifests a lot of, shows so much. So I want to be able to remind myself how to scan my body when I'm in a fearful situation. How I feel my arms, how I feel my eyes, how I breathe, all this bodily sensation, how when I'm facing fears. And second one is as one of our group members says that, to ask the subconscious, before you go to sleep, because sleep, if you are able to go to sleep, under the fearful situation, it's sleep actually process a lot of things, at least you have to get 6 hours sleep into the deep sleep stage. Then sleep would process a lot of things for you. So wake up in the morning, usually when you go have a really good overnight sleep, in the morning, the first thing, it was like, it just tell you, first thing you wake up, it tell you the solution, And then the third one, fears of failures, and instead of treating it like a failure, I treat it like a transferable skill, as one of our members also said. So yeah, okay, that's what my takeaway.
Thank you. That was awesome. That was great. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks. Next up is Laura, Ahmed, JJ, and Kevin. Laura, what's your takeaway?
I guess I have those big fears about, big world like level, and I can't solve those problems. And so take it to me, I have fears of long term, what my future will have. So I can't think about that because it's in the future and I don't know. And then I have this other fear of, like, I've had the picture of the wheelchair way down in the distance, but that wheelchair has been coming closer and closer to me. So I very much fear that. And so what I've decided to do is go on a mission, and I don't know that I can come to beating something. I can't come to a conclusion where I say, wow, I solved that problem, but I'm going to fight this thing to the bitter end, and I'm going to do whatever I can to keep that wheelchair as far away from me as possible. I've in the last months, I've experienced a fair amount of deterioration, which I didn't expect to get at this stage. But so that was my greatest fear. And I've just taken it on, and I'm working really hard now. And that's how I do it. And I've always done things that way. I just sort of, that's it. And I'm going to find a solution, something that I can do to offset it. So that's the way I do things. I guess I'm very stoic, and I just sort of, here it is, and go do it. So.
Well, Laura, I appreciate you sharing that with us. That is a very challenging, and I admire your determination and your strength. In a very, very small way, I can identify with some of the things that you said. I know that I will have thoughts of the future as well, and negative things that will happen in the future, right? So for me, most of the time where it's the most debilitating anxiety is if something were to happen to one of my boys. And I will have a thought that will just flash through my mind, and it will be of something devastating that kills them or something along those lines. And I use stoicism as well. Stoicism is really, really helpful for dealing with those kinds of thoughts in our minds and those kinds of fears. And I've learned, just like you, I've learned some different things that I do, some different strategies I do to for me, it's telling myself that no matter what happens, it can be horrible, but I'm going to make it through. I'm going to make it, even if it's horrible. And for whatever reason, that kind of calms me down in that instance where I'm consumed with, fear about something happening to my children, which isn't really exactly like what you're going through, but it is that stoic technique. And I think for anyone who deals with fear to the level that you're talking about, because you have these health concerns is what I'm assuming they are in your life, I would say listen to Laura and practice Stoicism and dig into Stoicism. And we've had some meetups here in 52 Living Ideas on Stoicism. I really loved those. Some of my favorite, and I learned so much. I learned that I didn't even know I was practicing Stoicism until I came to 52 Living Ideas.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura, and thank you, Shelley. Next up is going to be Ahmed, JJ, Kevin, and Joe. Ahmed, go ahead.
Yeah, well, hi, thank you, how do you pronounce your name? Shrikant?
Shrikant.
Oh, all right, thank you. I could really relate to what Laura and Shelley both just said right now. I didn't realize, I'm 26, so I feel like I'm a little kid sometimes.
That's because you are a little kid, Ahmed.
At times.
Yeah, compared to me.
For now. But I think I didn't realize I practiced this level of stoicism. I think my biggest fears relate to knowing myself or not knowing myself. I really feel like I have no idea who I am, even as I went to school for something. I knew it deep in my heart of hearts. I just had no desire for nothing, but if it just felt like the right thing to do, and I did it, and I really slugged through. And so I think my biggest fear would be not realizing my full potential, and also never really whenever however long I get to live on this earth, never really knowing how who I really am, and in that sense never being able to relate to people, never being able to connect, and never being able to do great things. I'm just now maybe the last couple of years finding out what I really enjoy, that has to do with music, that has to do with writing. So I'm grateful for that, the fact that I even get to do it. So I think it's been my biggest fear. It gets better every day, but it's still definitely there. But it's something I consider I worry every action I take it's keeping me from my fullest potential, and it's in a really vague kind of way.
Okay, so I have a couple comments. What is Jordan Peterson's website? Where not the understandmyself.com, but it's the one where
it's the self-authoring one that
yes. Okay, Ahmed, you might want to look at Jordan Peterson's self-authoring program. That might be something that would help. Also, I want to offer a bit of encouragement to you. First of all, I'm joking. You're not a baby. You're a strong man. You're 26. I have boys same age as you, right? But the reality is that you are young. This is a time to be exploring and figuring out who you are. There's nothing wrong with that. And I would encourage you to maybe change how you think about it. Instead of having fear about it, look at it and change your thoughts to, oh, this is exciting. I'm learning about myself. I'm learning that, oh, I don't like this thing over here. Great. That's wonderful. Now I know. Oh, but I know I like this thing over here. Yay. Now I know. I also would encourage you to journal. So one of the things that I used to be consumed with is I was very consumed with myself being self-absorbed. I felt like I was a very self-absorbed person. I felt like I thought about myself a lot. I put myself first, and that really bothered me. And so as I would journal about these things about myself I didn't like, I was working them out, right? I was thinking about it. I was writing about it. So those are the three things that the Jordan Peterson self-authoring program, check that out. Think about changing the way that you're thinking about what you're going through. This is a part of growing up and learning who you are. It's a lifetime of it. I'm constantly learning new things about myself. So it can be an exciting thing instead of a scary thing. And then consider practicing journaling and getting these thoughts out, writing them down.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emma. Then Shelley. Next up is JJ, Kevin, Joe, and Chachi. JJ.
Yeah, hi, thank you. So what the takeaway was that this discomfort that I experienced often before getting to the daily tasks of just organizing my things and getting to projects, and why I procrastinate is because of the discomfort, right? That discomfort is actually what's behind it is fear and anxiety. And so I wasn't really aware of that. And just kind of like it hit me. It's like, oh yeah, so it's not like something that is just minor that, oh, okay, well, just don't feel like doing it right now. If I go and, watch some television or go on the internet or go or eat something, I'll come back to it. And but I keep procrastinating. And then there's piles and piles of things that I need to do, and that adds more to the anxiety and the fear, and also the self reproach. So it's like a vicious cycle and things. So I need to figure out a way to like kind of like break through that. Also, the other thing between some insights this morning, somebody was speaking earlier about joy, and it's that I realized that. The the stress, the fear, anxiety, all those things can also be part of the joy of the journey, and so incorporating the scary aspects of the journey incorporating the scary parts aspects of the of the experience, right, into what you accept in the journey, of what you want, of what is fun in the journey. So creating a more adventurous spirit within, that will adapt, even though you are, because of just getting, um, not being, like a young adult anymore. It becomes more challenging, and so realizing that, okay, well, the journey now, it's not like the journey of a young adult, but it's still okay. It can still be very interesting and rewarding. So.
That's a really good point. And to what I said to Ahmad, about changing your perception of where you are in life, right? And choosing to look at it in a different light. And like you said, having joy. And then I want to, I want to bring up what you said about your avoidance and how that's continually perpetuating the avoidance of your tasks, and then they compound, and then you have anxiety about it, if that's what I'm understanding correctly. I would encourage you to listen to Jordan Peterson. If you haven't before, you can find him on YouTube, and he has a great podcast, and he talks about this. And I find, even with myself, and I'm a pretty motivated individual, that if I avoid something that I know I need to go ahead and take care of, it does build up anxiety. And so I have learned that the minute I'm avoiding something and the anxiety is triggered, I force myself to do it, right? And if you will do that, you will begin to set a pattern of behavior that it'll be easier and easier and easier. And I would encourage you to take it as a challenge. Every day you're going to force yourself to do one thing that you're avoiding, and just commit to 5 days or something, or 4 days or whatever. And just see if over time you don't find that it does get better, because my guess is that it will. It'll feel good to get it done, for one thing. And so you'll have that positive reward. And then you might, even after you do 5 days of doing one thing you're avoiding every day, give yourself a reward of some kind, something that you really love, something that brings joy to your life. But I would check out Jordan Peterson. He talks about that a lot, and about owning your responsibility and how fulfilling that is. I have to say that is, I've received some ridicule from people over the years when I have said, I've been raising these 5 boys, and I said, I'm not sure I really care whether my kids are happy or not. Like, that's not my goal in life, is to make my kids happy or their happiness. What my goal is with my children is that they feel a sense of purpose in what they're going about in life. And JJ, when you own your responsibility and the things that you have to do instead of avoiding it, you will feel better about yourself. You'll have a sense of purpose in life. I've seen it in my own boys. So I would just encourage you to just own it. And thank you for sharing. Thank you so much.
Next up is Kevin, Joe, and Chachi. Kevin.
Thank you, Shelly, and for the presentation. I share, I would say, this emotions that can become negative, like hate, anger, jealous, sadness. This feeling are complete in nature. However, this feeling is not good for your health. That's the point you keep in your mind yourself. So we need to change the word fear to the risk. That's how the risk, we need risk assessment. It's come to the true fear or it's a fake one. So make more reasonable logic to work on it. What if, right? Relax, you could relax by meditation, hear from nature sounds, exercise by walking outside, hiking, talk to someone close to you. I got some tips for, actually I got own problem, but I work on it too. Tips to boost the sleep and quality. Pre-bed, being mindful. You either do yoga, deep breathing, or meditation very early in the day. If you think you have fear, anxiety, early in the morning, lunchtime, don't put it later, or wait until going bed time. No, take a hot bath and shower, sing for yourself, even dance. In the bed, please keep simple requests in your mind. Actually learn from breakout room from the David. To recall subconscious, count numbers 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Right? Keep simple. That's your goal is to keep a good, deep, healthy sleep. Try focus your breathing. You consciously take a deep breath in and out until you feel calmer. And picture yourself with a peaceful sleep moment. Thank you.
Kevin, I'm so glad you shared that. That's actually what we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks. It's going to be a lot about self-care and self-love and how that helps with fear and anxiety, and sleep is a big deal. And so you've done the prequel in 2 weeks.
Struggle with, so I'm learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Next up is Joe, Chachi, V, and Judith. Joe.
So thank you, Shelley. It was a wonderful presentation. The one thing I just wanted to bring up is the idea we've spoken about a little bit about stoicism, but specifically the dichotomy of control within this process. And the reason I say that is because it really speaks to the idea of meaningful action that you can take. It's not just taking a forced action, but it's identifying what is a meaningful action and then not being tied to the outcomes, because you've talked about a little bit how things don't necessarily work out the way you wish them to. And I think that that's a really important point. Actually, we had a very good discussion on on Wednesday about how to improve our independent action, which is actually part of this in a way. But I'm not going to go there. But I think that the idea, though, it's not only the forced action, but I think it's really the idea of understanding what is an appropriate action. And once you take that, not being married to the outcomes is really critical, because sometimes it can get overwhelming. And once you understand that, a lot of the anxiety will then go away when you're talking about some of the other signals that are coming up. That's all in comment I really wanted to make.
Joe, I love that meaningful action. and I'm thinking back, right? So these are things that I did out of my own experiences. And I think there is a time when framing it as meaningful action is appropriate 100%. Like for me now, it is meaningful action, right? But I think there are some people, and probably this talk isn't maybe for every single person, but this is for someone who is maybe frozen, right? They can't act at all. Like it doesn't matter if it's meaningful or not. And I equate that almost to like being at the lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like you can't really even think, right? And so that's, to me, when you're at that level, you almost have to just take a step, any step, you know. But I really, really love the point you're making, because when you get beyond that, like I remember when I was getting beyond that bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I everything wasn't about forced action. It did become about something meaningful, right? It became about something that I enjoyed doing. Like, you know, I love to cook. And I remember the first time I was able to be creative in my cooking again, you know, and it was a meaningful action, which seems maybe small, but in that moment, it was a big deal. And so that's really valuable. Thank you for sharing that so much.
Thanks. Thank you. Next up is Chachi, V, and Judith. Chachi.
Thank you, Shelley. This has been great food for thought.
Good. Oh, I'm so glad. And it's good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. But I like what you said in the beginning about taking a small step, no matter what, because, and then in our group, in our breakout, somebody mentioned how when you have fear, how you put the focus on everyone else. It's like everyone else becomes fearful. You become afraid because you're putting the focus on what everyone else is thinking. And so it brought it home for me because of my fear of, like, you know, speaking up or saying anything or really having anything to say. Because I'm always thinking, well, I'm trying to answer the question before it's asked, or I'm envisioning a question that I can ask, or thinking there's a question I'm not answering. And so that constant, like, in that critic that's always like second guessing everything that you say. So I thought of the only way that I really ever get around anything, I think, is through preparation, what I can prepare and how I can just say, okay, like I'm not training to run a marathon. I'm just running a 5K.
Yeah.
Or I am training to run a marathon, but I can only run 5K. And maybe then I do a 10K and I'm thinking, well, I'm not a marathon runner. I'm just a 10K runner. And maybe you just find joy in the preparation. I never run a marathon, but I just run a few 10Ks a year. And now I don't have to run a marathon anymore. So I think my lesson was pretty much like, enjoy the preparation, but don't do anything. It's like, I don't have to do a marathon. I'm just enjoying the preparation for maybe doing a marathon. And because I think about it when you mentioned cooking, when it comes to cooking, I think, you know, for whatever reason, I cannot make an omelet. I can make scrambled eggs with any kinds of ingredients, but I cannot make anything look like an omelet. And I think I just have to let go of the fact that I'm making an omelet and just make some really tasty scrambled eggs.
Yeah. Well, that is so good. You had so much in there. I just love it. I think you and I are probably very similar creatures, because I have comments on 3 different things you said that I've experienced as well. So one thing, to this day, I struggle with perception. And what people's perceptions of me are. And like 2 weeks ago, after I did my talk, Joe got on a call with me because I was really struggling about my perception, everyone's perception of me after I shared so much. And Joe like talked me off the ledge. He's such a good friend. Thank you, Joe. So I get that, right? The idea of perceptions, and at different times where it's reared its ugly head for me, I've had to really work to let that go, right? I can't control what other people think about me. Like, you know, my intent is to do right in every area that I possibly can. And if someone's perception of me is different than what I would like it to be, that's not on me. I've done my best. And so I have to talk to myself like that, or call Joe and get him to help me talk to myself like that. The other thing that you said, okay, so the second guessing thing. So I used to do that all the time. Like, I felt like I needed someone to always validate the choice that I was making. And about 4 years ago, I had a long talk with myself and I said, Shelley, you're going to stop needing somebody to validate your every damn decision that you make. You are a smart woman. You're capable. You don't need everybody telling you that this little choice over here is okay. And so I literally forced myself to stop calling like my best friend or whatever to tell me, yes, Shelley, you should do that. And I said, I'm going to make my own decision. You know, I'm going to validate myself. That was really helpful for me when I made the choice to validate myself. I was a smart girl. I could make a decision, and I'm not saying don't seek counsel ever. That's, you know, don't read into that. That's not what I'm saying. But I knew I needed to practice that, and so that was my opportunity. And the practicing paid off. I really feel like it did. And then the other thing, what I hear you're saying is just the comparison trap that we all do. We all do it. We're like, well, I mean, I say that I'm a runner, but I don't run marathons. I'm barely running 3 and 4 miles when I run now. Like I could say, well, I'm not really a runner. I'm not running. I'm not doing long runs anymore on the weekends, but that's not the reality. Like, I am a runner. And I'm running 3 and 4 miles, and that's what I can do. And I'm not going to compare myself to my good friend Jill, who can still run a mile at, you know, under 8-minute pace at age 52. I'm like, I'm not going to be Jill. And that's okay, because to your point, I enjoy getting out and running. I love being in nature. I love doing it. And I love how it makes my brain feel afterwards. And that's, to Joe's point, the meaningful action, right? Because on the other side, that's how I feel. So anyway, I love what you had to say, and thanks for allowing me to share with you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chachi, and thank you, Shelley. Next up is going to be V, followed by Judith. V.
Hello, everybody. This is my first time at this particular meetup. Thank you so much for putting it together. I'm enjoying it immensely.
Good.
A takeaway I have is from the breakout room. There were some people talking about hyperventilating and panic attacks and problems breathing. And in the past few months, I've done a lot of research about the physiological and biological aspects of fear, given that our whole humanity has been shaken up by this pandemic, and there's fear more present than I think in decades that I can recall. So a takeaway I have from people that are hyperventilating, and they were asking me about what I do for helping me calm down. And one of the best things I found is to breathe deeply. And there were some people that spoke before me about breathing deeply. And what that does is it helps the nervous system come back to a balance where it's not overly fearful nor too calm, just in a nice centered point. So I'd like to add that, and that in order to meet one's destiny, I found for myself, and it's nice that other people that spoke before me, when I'm breathing deeply all the time, one can do it all the time, breathe diaphragmatically all the time, I find that I'm more focused, and my decisions about what's best for me and meeting my goals and the steps to take just becomes easier and easier as the more I breathe and focus every day, every moment, try to take good deep breaths. That's my comment on my takeaway. I do have a question of something that I've been struggling with. I'm finding that in the workplace, specifically more than socially, but specifically in the workplace, more so in New York City than some other areas of our country or in our world, gets to be sometimes dog eat dog and very hustle. And there's sometimes people in the workplace that are jealous or bullies or hateful. And I'm finding that sometimes that can bring me down and distract me and keep me from continuing on my path to making my goals and achieving my goals. Is there any advice that anyone could give about not being so easily or being less likely to be distracted by jealous, bullies, haters?
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to say I love what you talked about the coping skills that you've developed with breathing to help you with anxiety. And I think that's the valuable part of some of the discussions that we're having over the next weeks in dealing with fear, right? Figuring out what works for us and being able to share it with one another and encourage one another. And I agree with you on breathing. It is very helpful. In terms of workplace, I can, I have some of the same issues, right? So I find that people at work can be very, very negative. And when I'm around that a lot, I end up feeding into that, and it affects my mental health in that I start getting really angry and negative with them. And so I've learned that when I recognize that, I distance myself to the best of my ability from those people, which can be hard. But I've working remote right now makes it easier. And then also when I didn't work remote, I would put my earbuds in, and just kind of have some Zen time to myself where I could distance myself from those people to the best of my ability. But that's got to be super challenging, at work if you're encountering that all the time. My hope is that you would find something that would allow you to self-protect in order to not allow it to keep waylaying you mentally, because I've been there. It's very exhausting and detrimental.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next up is Judith. Judith, go ahead.
So I was thinking about the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, and we get really good at it. And so I was thinking about in my own life, in instances in work life, personal life, different situations, lifestyle life, where I know myself pretty well. I know who I am, what my capabilities are, or I think I do, right? So I usually know what I want to take on and what no, I wouldn't do that. That's not really me. But there have been times when I have decided to be open somehow. Maybe somebody said, "Why not, Judy? Why do you think that?" And when I have taken a risk is what I'm saying. I've just said, "Oh, really? Well, maybe. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe I'll try this. Maybe let's see what's the worst that could happen." So I think that it's good for us to leave some of that on the table. Like it might have been fear, like, there was fear involved, like, no, I couldn't do that or whatever. But I sincerely, believe that I didn't have that ability or that wasn't my personality. And I was proven wrong. So I've been proven wrong about myself enough times to to now kind of just give it a second thought if someone makes a comment, or even if I notice that I've just blocked off an avenue, or just kind of look, well, what avenues have I blocked off? Like maybe without anybody telling me, maybe there are things out there that I'm not looking at, I'm not seeing, because I have stories in my head that are so scripted that I don't even realize that I'm telling them to myself, and that I'm looking down a tunnel instead of at all the many options available. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, so Brene Brown, I was listening to a great podcast from her. It's been some weeks ago. I don't know if anybody listens to the Unlocking Us podcast, but she was talking about the stories that we tell ourselves in our head, and I was really impacted by that. And it reminded me also of when I first got into therapy, recovering from what I had lived through as a child. I had a lot of stories I was telling myself in my head as well, right? That were not true. So to your point, I think it's valuable to be able to look at that and think about that. What stories am I telling myself, and are they accurate? Brene Brown was talking about the stories that we tell ourselves being about our interactions with other people, right? So they respond in a certain way, and we script an entire story in our head. So that's what she was talking about. And then we react out of that, which who knows if it's right or not. And then I think more even, let me say, worth really digging into is if you have negative voices in your head telling you derogatory things about yourself, then that is something worth digging into and uncovering, because that could be really waylaying you if you're telling yourself a lot of negative things. But anyway, thanks for bringing that up, Judith. That was great. Very helpful.
Yeah, I don't even really
Shelley?
mean negative things. I'm sorry. I mean, even I would, obviously we don't want to tell ourselves negative things, but even just not negative things, just putting up boundaries that maybe don't exist, that are, just being open to different paths that have nothing to do with necessarily being negative about ourselves, that we might still be doing.
Well, and it's interesting because when you were saying that, I also thought, well, I thought about a lot of things, obviously, but one of the things I also thought about was Daniel Kahneman, and one of the quotes from his book that I just keep going back to is Thinking Fast and Slow book, is he says, we know ourselves far less than we feel we do, right? So when you have that kind of humble attitude, right, about you, then when things happen, you can say, okay, well, let me really evaluate this. Is this something I need to explore or look into? Maybe I need to know a little bit more about this. Thinking Fast and Slow, it's a great book, Daniel Kahneman.
Thank you, Shelley. And thank you, Judith. So Shelley, what's the homework?
Okay, homework time. So I'm fixing to put this in chat because there's actually a link, and I will, let me find chat. Okay. Hold on, give me 1 second. I'm trying to get there. I feel like I'm not moving as quickly as I ought to. Okay, here we go. So homework is choose one thing that you want to tackle over the next 2 weeks, right? So perhaps you are struggling with fear and anxiety keeping you immobilized. That's what this is talking about, right? So if there is something that is keeping you immobilized or keeping you from action, choose one thing you want to tackle over the next 2 weeks. It's not 20 things. It's not 3 things. It's literally just one thing. And then you want to write it down. So it's like setting that intention, right? This is what I'm working on. Write it down. If you have a journal, I use a lot of scraps of paper even, and I keep them stacked on my desk, and I go back and I refer to them. Write it down. And then every day, write down what choices you made to take that one small step in the right direction. So record it, record what you're doing, okay? And then if you want some more encouragement in this area, this is a link on YouTube, and it has to do with taking small steps, not using that vernacular, but that is what it's about, taking small steps and gaining action and traction in your life.
Wonderful. And I have gone ahead and posted it on this meetup in 52 Living Ideas. So if you forget to pick it up from here, you can go ahead and pick up both the homework and the link at the meetup page. So now let me tell you about what's coming up. There's just incredible number of things coming up. This weekend, I've got 5 meetups, which are amazing. So first one is going to be at 12 o'clock. And Stacy Harris, who is a mathematician, will be joining us to talk about Bayesian thinking. This is all about holding open the possibility that you could be wrong, and how do you relentlessly update your ideas with feedback that you're getting from your actions. So that's going to be at 12 o'clock. At 2:30, my friend Sherry is going to be talking about appreciating sculpture. And my friend Rupali is going to be talking about using art in education. What is the use of art in education? So that's going to be at 2:30. On Sunday at 12 o'clock, Brian McWay is going to be here. He's a student of Julian Jaynes and has written more than 16 books. And we're going to be talking about the core ideas of Julian Jaynes, about how self-consciousness developed in human beings and how you can increase your consciousness of yourself using language. So that's going to be at 12 o'clock. At 2:30, there is going to be an author who has studied Carl Jung's Red Book very deeply. It's the deepest work of Carl Jung. And she's going to compare that to the Red Book of Tolkien. So it's the idea of how do you use visuals in order to grasp the deepest ideas. Then at 5 o'clock, we have Randolph Ness joining us. He's the author of Why We Get Sick, written with evolutionary biologist about 25 years ago, that launched the field of evolutionary medicine. And he just wrote a book last year on connection between evolution and mental health. And that has got tremendous accolades. Economist puts it as the top book, one of the top books, best books of 2019. Sapolsky, who is a scholar from Stanford on evolution, says it's one of the best approaches to this entire problem, and looks like he has opened up a new field as well. So that's coming up on the weekends. Then next Friday, John will be back, and he will be talking about the issue of the importance of confronting our problems. And he's going to use the movie Machinist to demonstrate and to compare, to use that as a background to talk about how do you confront your problems. And 2 weeks from now, Shelley will be back. And Shelley, what will you be doing 2 weeks from now?
That's a good question. No, just kidding. I think I'm going to be talking about self-care and how important that is to take good care of yourself. A lot of what Kevin brought up, some of those kinds of things, we need to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves so that we can gird ourselves for action when we need to during difficult times.
Wonderful. Shelley, these meetups are going really, really well, because what is happening is that you're putting kind of a very crisp thought on the table, followed by questions. And then people are going into the breakout rooms, discussing it. They're coming up with this entire richness of observations, connecting to their lives. And then they come back. They're talking about this incredible takeaways and questions. So I think this is exactly what these meetups are for. It's not about lecture, because you don't really get anything from a lecture. See, you get things when you participate, when you speak your mind, you speak with others. So this is the best way that people can actually learn and implement ideas in their life. So thank you so much. I'm grateful to you and to all the folks who are here, because this is very rich dialogue.
Well, thank you for your encouragement. That means a lot. And I tell you, it's nice to be able to take the challenges of life and the hardships and give back in a very small way. If anything I say or do is helpful to someone in any tiny way, that just adds value and meaning, right? And it's an honor to be here. So thank you, Shrikant. Thank you for all you do.
Well, thank you very much, and see you folks soon. Bye.